Spring has sprung, and today's show is all about one of the most beautiful flowers out there, the orchid. I'm your host, Dani Giesbrecht. Thanks so much for tuning in to Go, and I am currently inside the beautiful greenhouse that belongs to those two gentlemen, orchid fanatics and identical twins, as you can see. That's Heinz and Lothar Oshrat. Now, the reason we're talking all about orchids with these two on today's show is the big orchid fair takes place in St. Albert this weekend. We're going to have tons of information. How expensive are they? Are they easy to take care of? And how rare an orchid can you find in St. Albert this weekend? Stay tuned for all of that. But up first, are you struggling with quitting smoking? Well, Sean TV's Bianca Jade discovers that budding out could be as easy as lacing up. Thanks for that, Bianca. Coming up next, Sean TV's Jen McDonald and volunteer reporter Vamsi learn about Sikh culture here in our community. Thanks for that, ladies. Okay, just a view of some of the many orchids. Lots of blooms, but some that have yet to bloom. Now, one of the rarest plants that the brothers have ever bought. We're going to show you that at the end of the show. Guess how much it cost? More than $500. I'll leave it at that. And I'm just checking out some beautiful flowers here. Coming up after the break, we're going to have some important tips and tricks about how to keep orchids alive and what you can see at the big orchid fair in St. Albert this weekend. We'll be right back here on Go. Welcome back. If you're just tuning in now, we are talking all about orchids. We are inside the greenhouse that belongs to identical twins, Heinz and Lothar Oshrat. And Heinz is hanging out behind me here. He is going to talk about his passion that he shares with his identical brother for these flowers. It started around 30 years ago, and you won't believe how much money they've spent in that time. But the reason we're talking about orchids on today's show is that this weekend in St. Albert, it is their annual orchid fair. You are going to see hundreds of beautiful flowers. You're going to talk to people who know so much about these gorgeous plants and find out how you can keep your own alive, like the one that's just clinging to life in my kitchen right now. It's a beautiful flower that I hopefully will see a second life. The bloom has fallen off, but that's okay. Apparently, there's a way to get it back. We're also going to let you know how to do that on today's show. But coming up next, speaking of St. Albert, we are headed back to the city with Sean TV's Jordan Hertner to learn about an art-based program teaching kids about history. From the visual arts to a good, clean sweat. Up next, a volunteer producer, Brianna McCutcheon, checks out Yeg Cycle. It's a party, a workout, and a fundraiser all in one. All right, we are now here with one half of the identical twin orchid-loving duo. I am here with Heinz Oshrat, and let's talk a little bit about this garden oasis you've created in your backyard, which you share with your brother.
Yeah, about 20-some years ago, we built this little enclosure to grow some outside plants and keep them over a little bit longer, and slowly it got more to the point where we heated it over the winter, glassed it all in, and filled it.
Mm-hmm. And I asked, do you and your brother share a bank account when it comes to your love of orchids? Because you've spent, how much money over the last 30 years do you think you've spent on orchids? Just ballpark.
Oh, God, 20, 30, 40,000, I don't.
Wow.
Oh, easily.
Oh, wow. And you also said that it's a big trial and error process. So in the beginning, you killed a lot of them.
Yes, we still kill some. Not all plants are that easy to grow, and your conditions don't necessarily meet what they want, or the way that you water isn't the most advantageous. And you do what you can, and some will succumb.
I have an orchid in my kitchen that I bought at Superstore at Costco or someplace like that. A beautiful flower. Some of them are quite easy to maintain. And you suggest for someone who's getting interested in these flowers for the first time to start there at a place where they're relatively cheap before buying the expensive plants.
Costco or Home Depot, they're $12 to $15. You can get a really nice Phalaenopsis. It'll be in flower for months, better than almost any cut flower. It'll last for months. Yeah. And then if you give it a small rest period and then reinitiate by cooling the Phalaenopsis about 10 degrees between day and night temperatures, it'll rebloom for you. Take about 3 months. It'll be in flower again for another 3 months.
What do you love about orchids? Why orchids? Why?
All the different colors, all the different varieties, and the challenge of growing them.
Yeah. Very nice. Okay, well, stay tuned. Coming up at the show, we're going to be speaking with Heinz's brother and chatting all about the big orchid fair happening in St. Albert this weekend. Were you going to take off on me?
Yes.
Okay, we'll be right back here on Go. Welcome back to the show. You are looking at some beautiful orchids to put you in the springtime spirit. Once again, we are inside the greenhouse that belongs to identical twin brothers, Heinz and Lothar Oshrat. They share a conjoined house. It's attached through the middle that they built side by side, and this greenhouse is out of the back of their homes. That's Lothar over there checking things out. We're going to be chatting with him in just a moment about a very rare, beautiful orchid that the two of them bought, the most expensive orchid they've ever bought, over 30 years, and what this flower actually looks like. Plus, some important information about the Orchid Fair coming up at the Enjoy Center this weekend. And in the meantime, I'm going to learn some tips and tricks on how to keep my own orchid alive, which is currently sadly sitting in my kitchen without any blooms at all. So stay tuned for that. But coming up next, we're going to introduce you to a local artist who is recently commissioned by the Art Gallery of Alberta to create a one-of-a-kind masterpiece out of wood. Here's Sean TV's Tim Dancy with more. And now to check out another form of art, the kind that comes in a cup, everyone's favorite form of caffeine kick. Here is volunteer reporter Matt Lorenz checking out what it takes to be a barista. All right, we are now here with Lothar, Heinz's identical brother, the other half of the orchid-loving duo. Now, this weekend in St. Albert, there is your big orchid fair. This is a very exciting event. How many plants and orchids and orchid lovers do you expect to see in St. Albert this weekend?
There should be, I think, about 30 or 40 displays, and depending on people's collection, it varies as to the size between 8 and 10 plants on a display to 40 or 50 on the bigger displays with people that actually have a lot more plants.
Are we going to be seeing some very rare, expensive orchids?
The varieties and the different types of orchids and colors of orchids you'll never see anywhere else.
Wow.
The species organization always puts in a wonderful display, and they have a really great collection of plants you'll never see because they're not easy to cultivate, or just you need the right conditions or the accessibility to get those plants.
What price range are we talking about for orchids that people will be able to find?
Orchids for sale will be probably from numerous vendors, and we have a real good lineup of vendors, and you can probably pick up a lesser plant for $8 or $10 and probably go as high as $100 for a really mature and rare one, but the average price probably will be within the $20 range.
And I asked your brother about how much money you've spent on orchids over the year in total. What's the most expensive orchid you two have bought? Probably
a multifloral path called Sandrianum, which a mature plant can cost about $600.
$600 for one flower.
Well, yeah.
And how long did it take for you guys to kill that one? Just bugging you.
That one is still growing.
Still growing?
We haven't bloomed it yet.
Where is he? Can you show us? Somewhere? We'll find it. We'll end the show with that. Lothar, thank you so much for your time. Before we go, here is your on-the-go calendar. Okay, here is that orchid that Lothar was talking about. It's a slipper orchid. No blooms at the moment. They paid almost $800 for this one flower. But if you see this little green, those little green nubbins coming through there, in another year it will bloom again. And he said it had 6 blossoms of different colors. Absolutely beautiful. Don't forget, the Orchid Show is at the Enjoy Center in St. Albert this weekend. Head to the website on your screen for more information. I've been your host, Giesbrecht. We'll see you next time.